But Rasmussen, he's the guy who talks about the potential of creating a coalition of the willing, he calls it.
Yes.
Now, there's an operative word there, not coalition, but willing. Because when you use that language, that means that there are unwilling people out there. And when you speak of NATO nations, there's no such thing as the unwilling, because NATO is a consensus-driven organization. So in order to have this coalition, if it was going to be NATO, all NATO members would have to agree. But you can't, so it's going to be the coalition of the willing, which means non-NATO. And if a non-NATO entity moves into Ukraine, it's not protected by Article 5, which means they're all going to die. This is what Rasmussen or everybody else doesn't understand. General Cavoli, the commander of the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, gave us all a hint of where NATO stands last January when he spoke at a Swedish Defense Forum. Asked about the conflict in Ukraine, he said the scope and scale of the violence taking place in Ukraine is beyond the imagination of NATO. Again, words matter. If you say it's beyond the imagination, Simple Marine in me says that means you can't imagine it. Right? Beyond the imagination. Can't imagine it. If you can't imagine it, you can't prepare for it. Because how can you prepare for something you can't imagine? So what Cavoli is saying is NATO isn't prepared for that kind of war because they're not trained to fight it. You can't train for something you can't imagine. They're not equipped to fight it. You can't equip for something you can't imagine. They can't logistically sustain it. They don't have the tactics. They don't have anything, nothing. And so that's NATO. They can't fight the war in Russia. And now from this group, that's NATO fighting as NATO. What I'm trying to say is NATO can't assemble a NATO force that's capable of fighting in Russia, against Russia right now, because they haven't imagined it. Serious. And so now you're going to take a coalition of the willing from this force that can't do it anyways. And now they're suddenly going to be magically imbued. It's like Harry Potter came in and gave a spell and boom, they all of a sudden were able to fight. They can't fight. They won't fight. It isn't going to happen. It's all the kind of nonsense that these warmongers do to make themselves feel important, make themselves feel somehow relevant. NATO is very good at allowing Ukrainians to die, but NATO is not very good at showing the kind of courage it takes to do what the Ukrainians are doing. This is my standard challenge to all those men out there, those real men. You know, you beefy guys, y'all go out and buy all your uniforms. Maybe you have some left over when you're in the military a couple of years ago. They don't fit as well because you've been eating and you haven't been going to the gym. That's okay. You were pretty studly back then. But you all are sitting there going, we could kick them Russians' butts. Do it. Do it. And for all you senators, Graham and all you other brave senators, you know, you old fat pastry-eating princesses sitting there saying, we're going to fight the last Ukraine. Okay, I know you can't fight anymore because you're old, you're fat, and you're a stupid senator. But please declare war against Russia. Please. So the American men, the real men, the one in the uniforms, they can go and do what you say they want to do. Because we're, after all, the best in the world. We're the studliest studs that ever walked the studly earth. We're real men doing real men things in a manly way with other men. Let us do it, baby. Let us go to war. Be men. Send us to war. Have the courage. You say you want to fight the Russians. You say you want them to die. We want to kill them. Send us, but you're not going to because you don't have the courage. That's the problem. Every American politician is a coward, a stinking coward. They're willing to let Ukrainians die for what they claim we believe in. But if we truly believed in it, then why aren't we dying for it? Why aren't we the ones out there doing the fighting? And I'll tell you why. Because America can't handle 10,000 body bags coming home.